Welcome to the next big thing. There are few countries as big as Pakistan. Its 220 million people make Pakistan the fifth largest nation in the world. And among top 5, Pakistan is the youngest, with even more Gen Z and younger people than the US and Indonesia. The young population and a burgeoning middle class is leading to rapid change in how Pakistanis spend their time and money. Pakistan has added 100 million plus mobile broadband subscribers who are using their smartphones to order food and groceries, get around, seek healthcare, study, stay fit, buy everything online and entertain themselves. Pakistani founders have jumped quickly on these opportunities, building and scaling startups faster than their regional counterparts. Here, you'll find the drive, grit, and ambition characteristic of the early days in Silicon Valley. The venture-backed startup transformation that happened in the US, China, India, and Indonesia is now taking off in Pakistan, which is why top global VCs like First Round Capital, Kleiner Perkins, Prosus, Defy, Y Combinator, Harry Stebbings, and so many more have already invested in Pakistan. Now, let us present why we believe Pakistani startups are the next big thing.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I must congratulate the organizers of Pak Launch and welcome the participants, delegates, dignitaries, and my fellow countrymen to this conference. I'm very pleased that such an event is taking place, and in this situation, post or during the COVID or end of the COVID era, it is important that linkages must be established between investors and startups throughout the world. Pakistan is uniquely placed, is the fifth most populous country in the world with a huge youth bulge, an educated youth, and the fact that they're mostly English speaking, then makes it easy for communications to take place between investors from outside and the global drives towards startups and in the IT and the software realm. I believe that this youth bulge is being encouraged by the government of Pakistan in a number of areas. For example, we are improving the infrastructure, we are improving the digital environment, we are investing heavily and intellectual change in increasing friendly regulations and ease of doing business. This is the framework in which we want digital economy to prosper and the startups and the IT sector to make tremendous progress. The Kamyab Jawan program, for those of you who do not understand Urdu, is make the youth successful in the future with reference to the IT sector. This Kamyab Jawan program, 20 billion rupees were invested in the youth last year, and probably the government plans to invest about 100 billion next year. Most of these programs are either very soft loans or non-interest bearing loans. Loans being given not on the basis of collateral, but on the basis of ideas and ability of the applicant to bring about definite change. So entrepreneurship is being encouraged, skill development is being encouraged in the IT sector, and startups are being encouraged also through the Kamyab Jawan program. We have a number of incubators now in Pakistan where these startups and the youth which wants to develop some ideas are being encouraged to take part. We need good mentoring, and I hear that Pak Launch has accumulated a vast base of investors who want to invest in Pakistan, who want to invest in the youth, as well as to be able to do mentoring of the people. Venture capital is the only way how these youth, besides the Kamyab Jawan program, can be encouraged. And when the investors recognize an idea and believe that they can be encouraged to come forward, I think it's a very appropriate situation in Pakistan. It's just jumping. It's Pakistan is catapulting itself in the new digital era. The Securities and Exchange Commission of Pakistan, which is the regulator of foreign investment and companies, etc., is creating a congenial environment for entrepreneurs and investors alike. It is creating a 1 billion rupee fund with the sole purpose of partnering with other SAP approved venture capital funds, and at the same time a separate venture capital fund of the same amount is being started so that these new entrepreneurs and the startups can find the money to roll themselves into the market. I hereby must congratulate all of you for attending this. I think it's very important that a good bond of communication is established through the Park Launch effort. I'm congratulating the Park Launch organizers, and I welcome the investors from throughout the world. I hereby open this Park Launch event on Pakistani startups, which is the next big thing, and look forward to witnessing a high energy, high quality conference together with you. Pakistan Zindabad. Thank you very much.
Hello everybody, I'm Anusha Ashraf, your host for today, and I welcome you to Pakistani Startup, the next big thing, presented to you by parklaunch.com. Let me tell you a little about Park Launch. It is all about bringing together the very best and accomplished Pakistani talent. Now, in a matter of less than 15 months, we have reached over 10,000 members globally and have achieved the critical mass to shift gears for enabling the Pakistani startup ecosystem, a mission that defines Park Launch's DNA. So with the support of our partners and led by our core team, Park Launch set out to organize its inaugural flagship conference aimed at inviting the most reputed investors and entrepreneurs from across the world to talk about what we believe is the next big thing, which is Pakistani startups. Today is all about showcasing this tremendous untapped potential through the eyes of those who believe in it, are involved in it, and intend to take it to heights it is destined to achieve. We start our presentations with a name that needs no introduction in the Pakistani startup circles. Atif Awan. He has had a decorated career at tech giants like Microsoft and LinkedIn, where he helped grow LinkedIn by 500 million members. Atif left his outstanding career as VP of Growth and International Products at LinkedIn to dedicate his time in developing the Pakistani startup ecosystem. He's established Indus Valley Capital in 2019, and through his reputation, hard work, and network in the Silicon Valley, he has already become one of the leading VC funds focused primarily on Pakistan. They have led the first rounds of Bazaar, AimFit, Remote Base, Marham, and the recent story in Spotlight, Airlift, which has landed the highest ever private funding round in the history of this country. So today, Atif will talk to us about why Pakistani startups are truly the next big thing.
Thank you, Anusha. Hello, everyone. I'm going to set the stage for today by making the case for why Pakistani startups are the next big thing. So the first thing about Pakistan you should know is that it's a very large nation. With 220 million people, it's the 5th largest population. That's more than Vietnam, Kenya, Malaysia, and Canada combined. Pakistan is also very young. While the median Indian or Indonesian is a millennial, the median Pakistani is Gen Z. And what that means is that for the next 2 decades, every retiring person from the workforce will be replaced by 3 young, internet native, more productive people, creating a huge demographic dividend and being the tailwinds for more production and more consumption. Pakistan also has a very strong middle class that's growing. According to an Ogilvy and Mather study, Pakistan's middle class will grow to 122 million by 2025, which is the largest absolute increase after China and India. Now, COVID might change those timelines a bit, but the point remains that Pakistan will have one of the largest expansion in middle class. A young population and a growing middle class, what that leads to is a rapidly rising consumer spending. If you visit Pakistan today, you'll notice that in the streets, in the restaurants, in the malls. Today's Pakistan is remarkably different from any preconceived notions you've had from a prior period, or worse, from selective media coverage. Even with the COVID impact, we expect Pakistan to have $360 billion in consumer spending by 2027, which creates multiple multi-billion dollar markets for startups to go after. Speaking of COVID, Pakistan on the whole has done a really good job balancing the public health and economic impacts. On the public health front, Pakistan has managed to avoid its healthcare system from getting overwhelmed. And while any death is a death too many, the cumulative confirmed COVID deaths in Pakistan per million people is currently at 113, which is lesser than India by a factor of 3, lesser than Indonesia by a factor of 4, and lesser than US by a factor of 17. On the economic side, The Economist recently did a study ranking the top 50 global economies on return to normalcy. Pakistan ranked number 3 after Hong Kong and New Zealand. And because of that, Pakistan's GDP contracted just a little bit, 0.5% last year, and has already bounced back in a V-shaped economic recovery to almost 4%. Now, we've talked about a young, large population, a rising middle class, and a huge market. But the question that remains is why now? So let's think about what is it that takes for any startup ecosystem to scale. It takes 3 things. Number 1, internet at mass scale. Number 2, founders and startups. And number 3, venture capital or VC. And these 3 things form this really nice flywheel, which starts with the internet, which is a precursor. So only after you get enough internet users, you actually attract the startups and founders to come and really go after the large problems. And it's only then you also attract the venture capital, the earliest venture capitalists to take a bet on a market. So internet enables both of them. But there is a really nice feedback loop between the startups and the VCs themselves as well, which is the more founders, high quality founders and startups you have in a market, the more venture capital that market attracts. And in turn, the more venture capital that's coming to a market, it pulls more founders, potential founders from the sidelines to actually join the playing field. And these two reinforce each other. And then as more startups build these products and services that masses can use, what that does is it increases the value of being on the internet, spending time and money on the internet. And that in turn drives further growth in internet usage, completing the flywheel. So let's look at how Pakistan is doing when it comes to this flywheel, one thing at a time. So starting with internet, the last 5 years, Pakistan has seen remarkable growth in internet adoption due to huge gains in affordability. An ITU study in 2019 showed that internet in Pakistan is actually cheaper than the regional peers like India, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. 1.5 GB costs you a little less than $1, and it's gotten cheaper since. And because of that, Pakistan has quickly attracted 103 million internet subscribers, and internet usage in petabytes has doubled in every single one of the last 4 years, thus creating a foundational critical mass for startups. Now, the second thing you need is tech talent, founders, and startups. So Pakistan has that tech talent in abundance to create successful venture-backed startups. We have about 400,000 software engineers. We have 20,000 CS and IT graduates coming out of universities every year. And we have more than 30 incubators and accelerators in the country. But more importantly, we have unicorns with significant teams in Pakistan. What these teams do is they enable a base layer of talent. And in particular, Kareem has been a training ground for future founders. All the while, they competed and won over Uber in the MENA and Pakistan region. And that's the reason, just like there is a PayPal mafia in the Silicon Valley, there is a Kareem mafia in the region, in particular in Pakistan, that has been the driving force for some of the earliest leading startups. Now, these startups have gone after every single vertical, every large market, and they're bringing them online. So starting from B2C e-commerce to B2B retail to ride-hailing, fintech, health tech, trucking, you name it, you already have multiple startups. Here I'm just showing the ones that have raised more than $1 million already. Okay, so we talked about the internet, we talked about startups and founders. Let's talk about VC. So Pakistani VC ecosystem, it really hit an inflection point in 2019, starting with Baikia's Series A round, and then later first round capital leading a $12 million Series A round of Airlift, which was largest in the country, but more importantly, this was the first investment by first round capital in all of Asia in over a decade. And that brought a lot more investors to look at Pakistan. So starting from that, the ecosystem starting growing. 2020 saw a lot of growth, but 2021, this year, is where we have remarkably seen the breakout growth. Already this year, there has been $233 million in venture capital invested in Pakistani startups. That is more than the last 5 years combined, and it's still September. So we have more coming. And it's not just the dollar value of the money that's coming in, it's the quality of the VCs who are investing in Pakistan. Some of the top tier VCs globally, including first round capital, Kleiner Perkins, Process, 20 VC, Buckley Ventures, Y Combinator, DeFi, Wavemaker, and so many more, as well as companies like Stripe, Visa, and Flexport have already invested in Pakistani startups, which is truly remarkable given the stage of the ecosystem and sets Pakistan apart from all other countries in MENA and Africa. What's equally exciting is how many of the best founders and operators in the world have also already invested in Pakistani startups. Just look at these names. You have Twitter, Medium founders, you have DoorDash, Flexport, TransferWise, Figma, incredible companies that we all look forward to, and their founders have personally invested in Pakistani startups, as well as a much larger list of companies where CXO and VP level executives have invested. Coinbase, Stripe, Shopify, Uber, Instacart, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Notion, incredible set of companies. And this list includes some of the best heads of growth in the world. I know many of them personally, and they are beyond excited to invest in these companies given the traction. Given all this interest, Pakistan has already proven that there is enough capital coming in, including some recent large funding rounds, that takes away any concerns about follow-on capital that's required to build unicorns. So I'll just recap top 5. So Airlift just recently announced their Series B, which is not only the largest round in Pakistan, but among the top 5% largest Series B rounds globally over the last decade. This was led by 20 VC. Harry Stebbings, who's a huge supporter of Pakistan, you'll hear from him later today as well on why he invested, and Buckley Ventures. Bazaar recently announced a $30 million Series A, led by DeFi and Wavemaker. Truly remarkable because this is a company that's only 15 months old. Cheetah has raised a significant Series B round, but they haven't disclosed it yet. Tajir raised a $17 million Series A round, bringing Kleiner Perkins to make their first investment in Pakistan. And Baikia raised a $13 million Series B from Process, which was their first direct investment in Pakistan. So these rounds all happened last 12 months, showing the momentum that Pakistani startup ecosystem has. Now, what this shows is that the internet startup VC flywheel, it's spinning in Pakistan at full speed. And in fact, it's spinning faster than earlier what happened in Indonesia and in India. So in 2019, I wrote a blog post that went viral, which was titled, Why Pakistani Startups Are the Next Big Thing. And I had compared Pakistani startup ecosystem back then in 2019 to Indonesia in 2009. So there was a gap of 10 years. In 2021, today, Pakistani startup ecosystem already looks like Indonesia in 2014. So we have traveled 5 years the equivalent of Indonesia's early journey, and it took us just 2 years. And the reason for that is that we had a late start. So the mobile adoption is already here, and the global capital flows faster today than it did a decade ago. But bottom line, this ecosystem growth, it's happening. It's going to happen very, very fast. So just a quick recap. We talked about Pakistan being a large market, 220 million people, very young with a median age of 22, growing middle class, creating several multi-billion-dollar opportunities. Internet usage in Pakistan has hit a critical mass with 103 million internet subscribers, which allows startups to go after large markets. And the flywheel of internet startups and venture capital in Pakistan is in full swing with $233 million in venture capital already invested in this year. We expect to cross $300 million. And what's happened in China and India and Indonesia has started to happen in Pakistan only faster. Pakistani startups truly are the next big thing. Thank you.
Kulsoom is the co-founder and general partner at I2I Ventures, an early-stage VC fund for Pakistan, and the country's first female-founded VC fund. Now, prior to opening the doors to I2I Ventures in 2019, Kulsoom was the founder of Invest to Innovate, I2I Ventures' sister entity, which she founded in 2011 to support and unleash the potential of young entrepreneurs in growth markets like Pakistan. Kulsoom is currently a non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council and serves on the board of the American Pakistan Foundation.
On August 20th, 2021, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Imran Khan, made a tweet or tweeted about Airlift's recent $85 million Series B raise. This is huge. The fact that the Prime Minister of Pakistan was actually tweeting recognition of the startup ecosystem in Pakistan and the innovation economy is enormous. It speaks to the validation of what the startup space means to the country. The fact that he said the government is fully committed to creating opportunities and speaks to where we are today. Actually, if we look back 5 years ago, 2015 to 2020, startups have raised over $445 million in capital, but over half of that has been in just this year alone, and we're only in August. So just imagine the fact that we've already raised $233 million. It actually speaks to the velocity and the speed at which the startup ecosystem is gaining ground right now. But it's really important to ask, why are we here today? How did we get here? And how far have we come? It's also important to know that this didn't just happen in a vacuum and it didn't happen overnight, but there's been evolution that led us to where we are today. My name is Kulsoom, and I'm the co-founder and general partner of I2I Ventures, which we opened our doors to our fund in 2019. But I've been a player in the Pakistan startup ecosystem for the last 10 years through the sister entity of what I founded, Invest to Innovate. And back in 2012 in Pakistan, just to give you a sense, there was only 2 private incubators and accelerators in the country with 0 significant funding sources. If you were an entrepreneur back in Pakistan, you really had to have the network in order to try to raise money for your business. If we fast forward to 2020, there have been over 25 major incubators and accelerators, over 20 formal funders and investors and growing, and over 80 co-working spaces. It speaks to the fact that there has been a support ecosystem that's been growing in speed around the startups that are also coming up in the market. And what's really important is that as much of international VC attention coming into Pakistan is really exciting, what we really need for the sustainability and the longevity of this ecosystem is also a local venture capital space. And we've actually seen that growing as well. The fact that there's over 10 VC funds, local angel syndicates that all play a role in these deals, right? That actually help international VCs navigate the space better by investing. They're also helping startups be able to overcome some of the obstacles that happen in a high friction market like Pakistan. What also started to change is the regulatory environment. I've been a really vocal critic of the fact that over the last 10 years, one of the biggest things that's really held back the startup ecosystem in Pakistan has been the regulatory barriers that have been onerous and have actually created a ceiling on the innovation economy in Pakistan. But that's begun to change. In the last year, we've had a very progressive people at key regulatory bodies, the State Bank of Pakistan and the Securities and Exchange Commission, that have enacted regulatory changes with the support and help from key stakeholders in the ecosystem that have been game changers for the space. We've actually seen, as an example, one big regulatory change that happened was that startups in Pakistan, Pakistani tax residents can now set up holding companies abroad, which means they're much more able to attract international VC attention and money and lower the risks overall. We've also seen the State Bank of Pakistan lower some of the barriers that was occurring around the financial technology space, therefore allowing the fintech space to really take off. Those things in general have been really exciting and have really kind of been able to support the flywheel effect that's been happening with the funding rounds that we're seeing right now. What we've also seen in the past year is that the pandemic, as much as it's been a tragedy around the world, including in Pakistan, has also pushed digitization in the space. It's been allowing people to go online and be more comfortable with buying online. And if we were to actually just look at and zoom in on the last 2 years of 2019 to 2021, where we really started to see that inflection point, in 2019 and 2020 combined, startups raised a little over $100 million in capital. But in 2021, we're actually seeing that double, right? Just this year alone, just by August of 2021. What's also really exciting is that a lot of the deals that were happening in the last 2 years have mostly been pre-seed and seed stage deals, but we're seeing a higher number of deals happening at Series A and Series B, which actually speaks to the fact that companies are graduating to later stages of investment. And if we really want to see exits take place in this market, that's actually a really exciting trend to pay attention to. If we were to zoom in on two of the most exciting sectors, the sectors that have raised the most amount of capital, as much as we see in other emerging markets, e-commerce has been the biggest in Pakistan. From 2019 to 2021, startups in Pakistan in e-commerce have actually raised $244 million, but over half of that has just been in this year alone in deals like Airlift, Retailo, Cheete, Tajer, and Bazaar. We're actually seeing, as people have been going online, as like mobile penetration, broadband penetration, all of those things are all happening in tandem. We're just seeing more people buy online and these startups that are coming up being able to service that huge demand that's happening. And as the e-commerce space is taking off, as I was mentioning earlier, the barriers, the regulatory changes that have lowered the barriers for fintech means that the fintech sector is taking off. And although fintech has actually raised only a fraction of what e-commerce has raised, $44 million since 2019, the fact is that the last year of regulatory changes have really allowed the fintech space to take off altogether. So while the number might be smaller, the quantum of deals is equal to what we're seeing and almost equal to what we're seeing in e-commerce. And actually over half of that money has happened just in this year alone in deals like K-Trade, Tag, Finja, SadaPay. We're seeing deals in payments, in neobanks. We're seeing companies come up in asset management. So we're seeing the full gambit of that sector really take off, which is really exciting for what needs to happen for this emerging market altogether and for this innovation economy. If I was to zoom out, I've been working in the Pakistan startup space for 10 years, and what really motivated me, what really inspired me was because I believed in the potential of this market and I believed in the potential of its people, especially its young people in Pakistan. And I believe that we were more than negative headlines of what people might have been reading over time about Pakistan. Today, these are the news headlines that we're also seeing about Pakistan today. And it makes me so incredibly proud to be part of an ecosystem that is pushing things forward in such a positive way. And we're only at the beginning. So I'm really excited for you to be part of this, to take part of it with us, and to be part of what we're going to see happen in the future.
It is now time to listen to some of the much anticipated global VCs who are excited about the prospects of Pakistan as much as we are. We have some big names lined up and ask them about their interests in the Pakistani startup ecosystem, their investments in the country, and how they go about identifying opportunities. Let's have a look.
We're extremely excited and very fortunate to be here with you. So as of today, we have invested in 4 amazing Pakistan companies: Airlift, Retailo, Digikata, and another fintech company that we have just committed to invest. And we're actively looking for several more, and hopefully we can find ways to collaborate and explore areas of collaboration with you. Our experience with Pakistan founders has been extremely humbling. We always feel that they're full of passion, dream, and vision, and also they have a very focus on discipline, which I humbly respect a lot.
One, because the talent is so incredible in Pakistan on the engineering and customer success front, and 2, that in this kind of crazy war for talent, actually building a team in Pakistan is very economical. And with the sort of rapid move to kind of digital communication and working from home, that it's much more normal to do meetings and stand-ups and collaboration through Zoom. And so the teams that used to feel very alone based out of a Pakistan office are now feeling much more integrated with teams based out of Pakistan, which is great. I think with so many incredible countries that in the US are already multi-billion-dollar valuations, sometimes trillion-dollar valuations, that are not targeting the Pakistani population. And if we use our talent to actually build that for Pakistan and serve just Pakistan, which is 216 million people, that very iconic companies can be built.
Hi, I'm Teddy Himmler, a global investment partner at Antler, and I'm thrilled to witness Pakistan's digital transformation. In 2014, when I was at SoftBank, I began investing in Indonesia, and I saw how in 6 years, market capitalizations exploded from less than $1 billion to hundreds of billions today. I think Pakistan is Indonesia in 2014.
We look at all emerging markets, developed emerging markets like Brazil, Russia, Turkey, and then the more frontiersy, earlier stage emerging markets like Pakistan, Egypt, Nigeria, to put them in those kind of categories. And Pakistan is early and has early, fintech opportunities as a result. But when you see what's happening in e-commerce and marketplaces, you know what will come next. Online, offline payments needs to happen, credit, SMEs, consumer needs to happen, the investment spectrum needs to happen. We've seen this playbook happen in regional countries like India, Indonesia, not that it's finished yet, and extrapolate is maybe too easy, but we know the direction of travel in Pakistan. And once you've got long-term capital and you find the right founders, it's the right place to be.
And we actually started our journey in Pakistan back in 2018 when we announced our first investment into Sasta Ticket. Since then, we've invested into another 6 companies in Pakistan. We invested into Airlift, Tajir, Invent Hub, SafePay, Tag, and Truck It In. But here's the exciting part. Since then, we've actually made another 8 investments on top of those first 7, except these 8 investments have not been announced yet. So stay tuned. So Gobi, through Fatma Gobi, we've already made 15 investments in Pakistan. I think that makes us the most active, if not the most, one of the most active early stage venture investors in the Pakistani tech ecosystem. And you know what? Stay tuned. Expect more to come.
The most exciting things is I'm seeing great companies from Pakistan literally every week now. But at the same time, we through Next Billion Ventures, and I also advise Village Global in Silicon Valley, have done 2 investments. Bazaar is the first, which is a B2B marketplace, a model I know very well from investing in other parts of the world, with a fantastic experienced team who really understand the dynamics and the hands dirty aspects of it, who will then use software and data to, I think, blow it out throughout the country. And the second one is a company called API, which is a payroll advance company. Again, another model that we have seen from Southeast Asia to Latin America. And we think it's an incredible opportunity with a great founding team to do the same kinds of opportunities unique to the needs of Pakistan. It's been such an exciting surprise, and it shouldn't have been a surprise at all. But not only the quality and caliber of kind of the basics of tenacity and follow through and persistence that you look for, that is not surprising at all. But it's a number of these amazing founders who actually have seen the show before. So they'll come from Kareem, or they'll come from other fintech or other emerging markets, as well as some of the earlier attempts in Pakistan. So not only are they raring to go, but they actually understand how it's done. And I think that's been incredibly impressive. I've spent now over a decade really focused on emerging markets, and I have a pretty good instinct of where the opportunities lie. And it all begins with talent. And at that time, we saw in Pakistan that there's incredible talent, again, with tremendous market size. And it's really below a lot of people's radars. We really think it could be one of the great next big things. And we're very excited to be on this journey.
So we've now made 3 core investments in Pakistan: Airlift, the on-demand delivery business; Tag, a local challenger bank; and Bridgelinks, the freight marketplace. And we invested in each of them for different reasons. Airlift was our first investment in Pakistan and was truly a bet on the founder and the broader market thesis. Prior to Quiet, I ran finance for Shift and e-commerce for cars business in the US that went public last fall. And Quiet was previously an investor in Uber and Turo. We'd long tracked the transportation industry and thought there was an opportunity to build a solution between public transit and private cars within the emerging markets. And once we met Goal, we were completely sold. He's an excellent operator who's combined an ambitious vision and a track record of operational expertise, and basically had a really bold view of the future and a real plan to get there. Tag is a local challenger bank that we invested in earlier this year. We were impressed by Talal, the founder, specifically his grit, his willingness to run through walls, and his deep knowledge of global challenger banks. We were drawn to the specifics of the Pakistani fintech ecosystem and how regulations were changing, and thought there was a compelling why now for Pakistani challenger banks to emerge. And finally, we recently invested in Bridgelinks, which is a local freight marketplace. For an early stage startup, we'd never seen such impressive growth, and we thought that the market opportunity to digitize the freight industry was massive. So we're incredibly excited to join Salman and team there as investors.
So far, we've made 2 investments that touch Pakistan, which we're quite excited about. The first is a company called Recote. We actually met them in Thailand, but they also have operations in Pakistan. So they're founded and led by a team of MIT alums. We're aiming to use a combination of machine learning, satellite imagery, agronomic models, and weather data to help smallholder farmers improve their productivity and profitability. So they help farmers implement best practices, gain market insights, and even access to capital. And the results have been encouraging. We've got more than 150,000 farmers on the platform across Thailand and Pakistan. And farmers are seeing double-digit percentage increases in both productivity and profitability. Our other investment is in an FMCG B2B marketplace that's hyper-focused on Pakistan's 700,000 plus Kiryana stores. It's called Bazaar.
Now it is time to hear some trailblazing founders as to how they view the potential and future of the Pakistani startup ecosystem.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the panel with the startups on why Pakistani startups are the next big thing. Great to have you all over here. So as we know, who are working in Pakistan, Pakistani startups have raised over $230 million already this year, which is more than 3.5 times what they raised last year. And I'm really happy to say that amongst all of you, I think we have around between 180 to 200 million raised between the companies that we have over here today. So really exciting. Thank you for taking the time out, and hopefully we'll have an interesting discussion. So diverse experiences, diverse products and services that you guys are offering. So I'm going to start off with asking a question that I'd like all of you to answer, which is, what is the problem or the opportunity that you're looking to address or to solve? And while you're doing it, what is the biggest challenge that you're seeing right now, and how are you looking to address that challenge? So Kasif, I'll start with you. Would you tell us a little bit about Finja? That would be great, please.
Yeah, thank you. look, Finja is a digital lending platform that focuses on MSMEs and their supply chains. And we have a few assets, and one of them is that we've got multiple licenses, and these licenses allow us to operate like a digital bank without any incumbent dependence, and that's the secret of the fast execution that we do. The other thing is that we don't compete with banks because we've got lending books of multiple banks, and that allows us to create the capital to lending. The other asset that we have is around partnerships that we've created with the FMCGs and with the distributors, sub-distributors, stockists and mobilizers, and that allows us to lend against stock, to the merchants. And the problem that we're trying to solve is that Pakistan has, very little lending done, 2 to 3% lending in the country. And what we're trying to do is that we're trying to solve that problem. And already we are 7% of the overall, lending loans to the SME in this country. In the last 3 months, we did about 1 billion, in excess of 1 billion rupees of lending, which is $7 million. And in the next 3 months, we're going to do 5 billion rupees, which is $30 to $35 million of lending throughput.
Amazing.
That's really what we are up to. Yeah.
Great. And what is the challenge that you're seeing coming down the road or that you're dealing with right
now?
The
challenge is that, look, we are in 25 cities now, and we've done, 100,000 digital loans in total. The challenge is that we need to be in hundreds of cities in the next few months, and we need to grow our number of loans to many X the size, and that's the challenge.
And an opportunity.
Absolutely, yes.
Hamza, what about you and Bazaar?
Thank you, Misbah. Thank you for having us. Thank you for giving Bazaar this platform. Bazaar is essentially an operating system for traditional retail in Pakistan. What does that mean is Pakistan is a country which is dominated by traditional mom and pop convenience stores, owner-operated stores across every single category of groceries, fashion, electronics, pharma, etc. And so these stores are typically offline, but they are really the mass market or the middle of our economy. So Bazaar's idea is to start using the platforms they now have in their hand, which is a smartphone, to try and simplify their life and their business and help them grow and improve how they run their business. So a year ago, Bazaar started off with a simple product which would allow a grocery retailer to order about 1,000 products for their store, which they can sell, because that is something that they spend most of their time, their effort, and their capital on. So a year ago, we started off with a B2B commerce product that was essentially allow that. And then a few months ago, we also launched a product called Easy Khata, which is a ledger product in the spirit of creating, multiple digital products which can, solve different facets or different problems in that retailer's life and their business. And then the idea is to make it an operating system where when a retailer wants to start their business, run their business, acquire products, acquire financial services, acquire software, they are able to think of that, and they think of Bazaar by doing that. And through that, they're able to grow their businesses multiple folds versus what they could do before. I think the challenge in doing all of that, this large ambition, is essentially of scale. Right? We are in a market which is over $170 billion economy. So how fast can you have the maximum amount of impact? Which means that in a business like this, you have to be very efficient in scaling your operations, scaling your team, adopting, getting your customers to adopt the digital behaviors. So it's essentially the challenge of scale, of infrastructure, and how are you able to capture as much of the pie as possible to really meaningfully add a few percentage points.
Right, and I'm sure the latest round you've raised is going to help towards that goal.
That is the idea, inshallah.
Dr. Sara, we'll come to you next. Would you like to talk a little bit about Sehat Kahani? What have you done so far, and what's the challenge you see coming down the line?
So the problem that we're solving through Sehat Kahani is basically the problem of access of healthcare in Pakistan. 100 million people today in the country don't see a doctor ever in their lifetime, which means they might go to a quack or a midwife or a nurse, but going to a doctor is not possible for half of our population. And a big factor that feeds into it is a large population of female doctors not working. So data says that we have 85,000 doctor brides or non-working doctors in Pakistan, which is the majority of the medical workforce. So we connect this cohort of female doctors to patients who need healthcare using a telemedicine solution so that people can access doctors virtually. We've created a solution that works for different populations differently. So in low-income communities, we do it through brick and mortar clinics where nurses are sitting and they connect the patient to an online doctor. For masses, we have a mobile app, and in that also we have a corporate solution for corporate employers to provide telemedicine access to their employees through a B2B channel. And then we have a retail product as well that allows anyone, people like you and me, if ever we have a medical issue 24/7, we can reach out to a doctor in less than 60 seconds. What we've achieved so far is we've created the biggest network of telemedicine clinics in Pakistan, which are 35 clinics across the country in all 4 provinces. We've had over 500,000 consultations through our application. We have the largest corporate network using our app, which is 753 corporates through insurance providers and individual accounts. I think saying that, if healthcare is an issue of 100 million people in Pakistan, and we've done 500,000 consultations to date, that's 0.5% of the total market. So unless and until we have more people trying telemedicine as an alternative to physical care and understanding the importance of reaching to a qualified doctor rather than a quack for a country which is majorly run by quack providers or non-qualified health providers, we won't be able to see a long-term impact in the healthcare chain. So our challenge is to get our app being used by a lot of people in a small amount of time.
Right. So building awareness and customer adoption on the technology side. Great. Ahmad, we'll come to you next. What's happening with Cheetah, and what are some of the things you see coming down the road as a challenge?
Thank you very much. What we attempted to solve was the now commerce problem, what we've called now commerce, which is instant fulfillment. So what we've done is we've built multiple verticals and inherently a broad-based logistics fleet that can cater to those multiple verticals, whether they're our own or whether they're third party. And we do that through 2 vehicles. Cheetah is the more known B2C play that we do, but we also have Swift, which is more the digitized version of the courier model, which has digitized the COD business. So that's how we've decided to sort of build the logistics fleet and solve the fulfillment problem through what we are calling now commerce. People have talked about scale, so I won't mention scale again as a problem. The big challenge that we're facing on the customer acquisition side is this discount-driven economy. Right. I don't want to say that our consumers are discount seekers, but I just said it. But anyway.
Pakistanis love a bargain.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah, we're always looking for bargains.
Let's just say they're price conscious, right? So for price conscious people, every discount is very valuable, right? And over the years, as in every sort of third world market or frontier market, what happens is that startups come, offer huge discounts, and and that's how they get people hooked and converted and do their customer acquisition. So now we're left with, or we're facing people who just don't want to engage without that discount. So for us, solving that problem and creating real value and getting the unit economics to work without giving discounts and getting to the scale that everyone is talking about is, I think, going to be a real challenge going forward.
Great. Meher, will come to you next with Airlift. Would love to hear a bit more about your story.
Sure. Thanks for having us, Misbah. So with Airlift Express, we're looking to basically lay the groundworks of quick commerce in the developing world. And, as you've seen over the last 12 months, there's been a global transformation when it comes to, retail. And, in terms of the next few years, we're seeing this, sort of transformation being accelerated, especially, in the developing world. For example, right now, 8 out of 10 people, they prefer to, sort of shop in store. Over the next 5 years, we see this being, like 2 out of 10 people maybe, and the number is completely flipping. So I think we want to lead that transformation in the developing world, in the broader Asia and Africa region, in the months and years to come. In terms of problems or challenges, I think just by virtue of the pace at which the business has scaled over the last 12 months, I think one thing that has worked really well for us is attracting and sort of cultivating the right talent. And going forward, as we sort of expand our breadth and as we expand across continents, I think sort of maintaining and sort of building that culture within the new teams, I think that comes across as the biggest challenge, because we view that as a true competitive advantage.
Yeah, I can see that. Great. And Malaka?
So AIMFIT is on a mission to make 110 million women in Pakistan believe that yes, they can. On the surface, we offer fitness workouts across multiple programs that are accessible through our digital mediums. But But what we're really in the business of doing is helping women overcome the physical and mental barriers that they set up for themselves. AimFit women have completed 25 million workout minutes to date. Wow. We don't track the payments that our members are giving us. We are instead obsessed with our North Star metric of how many workouts is everybody doing every month. And that number today is comparable to global benchmarks. Now, let's let that sink in for a minute, right? We look at the Olympic medal table for Pakistan, and then you look at this statistic of Pakistani women working out, and I think that's just incredible.
That's great. And what's the challenge that you see coming in for AimFit?
So fitness centers traditionally operate on a model where they rely on people paying them and not showing up. AimFit is disrupting this market, right? We are obsessed with how many workouts people actually do and the value that they receive from AimFit. Without subscription payments enabled end-to-end in Pakistan, which is a really big challenge right now, like Kasf is trying to solve, it's quite a challenge to continue to have your customers retained month on month. We see at AimFit that still with this ecosystem still not mature, people come back to us in their fifth or sixth week after they've finished a month and manually sign up again. So a really big opportunity for AimFit is definitely subscription payments in the startup space that I think will just open a lot of doors for us.
Great. And I think the work Kasif and others in the fintech space are doing is going to start helping all of the companies actually improve the experience that their customers are getting, make payments more seamless, access to finance. So speaking of opportunities that Pakistan offers, I think two areas which often go unlooked, or I have up till now, is women as a target market and the mass market as well, rather than just the top 1 to 5% of people that have a higher spending power. So I'd like to ask this question generally to all of you. Maybe we can start with you, Sarah, and focus on the women aspect because you work with female doctors. A lot of your patients are female as well. How are you looking at at this opportunity of women that Pakistan offers?
I think because my business is directly related to women, as the entire supply chain that we have is made up of female doctors, I often get asked this question, why female doctors only? I believe there's a huge opportunity in the medical workforce that is going absolutely untapped and underexplored, be female doctors or specialists or community health workers as well, that can be utilized to such a great level to solve this issue. But also on the demand level, we've seen through our work that when there's a female who's taking a consultation, and females are the main drivers for healthcare decisions in our families, even in the lower income or the lower tiered families, they really drive their family's attention towards adoption of the product. So they'll take it for themselves, then they'll bring their children, they'll bring their family members, they'll bring their husbands. This happens to us in our clinics as well as on our mobile application. So we cater to around 60% women through our services, and women have a 2 out of 4 return back rate as compared to a 1 out of 4 return back rate to a male customer. So I really believe that when it comes to healthcare or fintech, females can add as real community champions or mobilizers that can get more people to try the service. And it's really proven true mainly in the fintech industry, and I think we should really capitalize on that.
Yeah, and great segue for you, Kasif. How are you looking at it on the fintech space?
Look, it's become clear that women, whether they're housewives or whether they're professionals, and now if they're entrepreneurs, they just make for better credit risk, and they bring a greater sense of responsibility to the table. They're very conscientious in the way they spend the money, and then they take a lot of stress in making sure they have great credit. So women is a target market that we are looking at, to lend aggressively.
That's great. And Malaka, you already mentioned that in terms of fitness and hours, Pakistani women are actually really kicking it. So how do you see that growing now? And will women continue to be a focus of your business?
Absolutely. So the demand for female-only workouts that are localized in Pakistan for women is huge. We see investors excited by that, localized opportunity a lot. And I think that... Sorry, what was the second part of your question?
No, that was it. That there's an opportunity that that women can be targeted and build. You can build a business around.
Yeah, absolutely.
Women.
We see members at AimFit right now are paying us a higher subscription than Peloton is charging in America.
Wow.
And that is for the localized, tailored experience that they're getting. So absolutely, the opportunity is huge.
Great. And so I guess coming to the broader question then of mass market, it's all about tailoring your products, like you said, to what people want in and where are the gaps. So Hamza, how is Bazaar looking at targeting the mass market? How are you getting out to people that have not been touched potentially by some of these services before?
Yeah, so I think we're a country of 220 million people, and of course, there is a journey to touch each of that live. So we've taken an approach where can we see that in our social construct, in our economy, if you look at a grocery retailer, they have about 100 to 300 people or households or consumers walk into a small grocery store in Karachi or Lahore, which means that if you are bringing a dollar value or convenience or disruption to that grocery store, indirectly you're touching hundreds of lives that way. And so for us, that is the mass market today. And if we are able to digitize this corner store traditional retailer, in effect, we're actually affecting hundreds of lives. And the other thing we've seen is the way to digitize this market is like Malak mentioned, localized tailor approaches, right? So we at startups look at a lot of global benchmarks and emerging market benchmarks, and we try to do pattern matching as well. But there's also a huge case for how much can you tailor and bring the local nuances in how you're developing your product, your experience, your value proposition, even the language, your content, branding, etc. So at Bazaar, when we launched the commerce product, we've made sure that app is as simple as possible. If you can use WhatsApp, which most of the mass market who are digitally enabled in Pakistan can use, you should be able to use the Bazaar app as well. And similarly with Easy Khata.
Great. And so Meher, coming to Airlift and Airlift Express, you're actually looking at getting to customers directly, right? And so how is that helping you reach people that otherwise potentially earlier were not accessible?
So great question. I think we started Airlift 2.5 years back with the sort of goal of creating self-empowerment. First with our mobility vertical, and now with quick commerce. So I think it is basically centered around self-empowerment and agency in the way that people who had to first walk out of their houses, women, elders, they now, have everything available, in the palm of their hand. So I think, that's how we sort of, view this sort of transformation and this transition from, offline to online, and, bringing everything, sort of at your fingertips. And I think, that's sort of, what we want to, accelerate Pakistan's path towards. And, whoever has a smartphone, whoever, has access to internet, has access to all these things. So I think that's what's most exciting about what we're building.
Great. And then from quick commerce to now commerce, Ahmed, have you seen a change in that adoption after COVID, and have things sped up in that space?
Absolutely right. The joys of operating a marketplace are such that you have the riders on one end who you're trying to digitize. So now all the riders have apps, as you know, with them. And then you have the vendors, like, who you need to digitize, because you don't want to be calling them up to place orders. So now they're digitized. And then obviously you have all your customers, because the only way for them to place an order is through the app. And we have over 100 million apparently smartphone users now in the market. So the way the marketplace works is, if someone wants to start their own business, we are there, and we're like, okay, let's digitize you, let's grow your income. If you want to be a rider, and again, use that to grow your income. And then ultimately, you get to an income level where you become the customer. So it's the beauty of interconnecting everything, right? On one hand, you're helping people make money. On the other hand, you're helping them spend money and get value for money, whether it's through better deals, through cost efficiencies, where you can offer better pricing.
Yeah.
So
I'm being told we're running out of time, but we'll go a few minutes over. So Hamza, I'm going to ask you, as you've just recently raised your round, and I'll come to you after this, Meher, what are some of the things that you're hearing investors, both local and foreign, ask you in terms of what do they want to know about your business or Pakistan? And what has been something that either has surprised you or has surprised investors that you have been able to tell them about the country?
Yeah, I think I'll come to the surprise first. The biggest surprise has been when a year ago, when we were raising a pre-seed round to now raising a Series A, how the narrative has completely changed so quickly. And so earlier, a year ago, people would ask about Pakistan, the fundamentals of the market, about security, about politics, about talent. But now in this Series A, I think it was more and more about the fundamentals of the opportunity, how big the market is, what is your approach. So we're very close to playing a level field across all of the emerging markets. So we have now sort of surpassed that conscious bias, especially an international investor would have, all right, Pakistan is something unfamiliar to them. And with past 1 year, I mean, you look at Airlift, you look at Cheetah, you look at Finja, we've now all raised essentially money primarily from international investors. And a lot of people are now making their first bets into Pakistan. And once they make their first bet, a number of follow-on bets come through. So we're all trying to sort of change that narrative together. But alhamdulillah, so far, that narrative has changed very, very quickly. And when you talk about what are they asking about, they're really interested in, all right, how is the digital penetration increasing? Do you have the right talent base to build the kind of ambition you want to go after? Does the market have enough fundamentals and juice for you to sort of, respond to the digital disruption that might happen? And then does the macroeconomic condition support it? Earlier, you would ask, where will you get your Series B, or where will the exit come from? Those questions are no longer being asked. The capital constraint or that bias is now being very, very quickly removed. And we're now at that level playing field of, competing with a Silicon Valley startup and in a Pakistani startup. We're talking to similar funds, similar questions, and similar the size of the opportunity.
That's great. And Meher, at Airlift, I'm assuming you've seen something similar in terms of the investor interest?
Yeah. So I think, in our experience, the scarcity, it doesn't lie, in terms of capital. I think it's more around, the talent and traction. So, in our conversations with investors, both global and local, we've seen a lot of excitement around the team that's executing on the ground. And I think that's what, most of them bet on, and that's what, they get most excited about. And I think that reflects in, what the organization or company is able to achieve, in any given time. So I think, it's been phenomenal. I think, it sort of, also breeds confidence into the Pakistani market, into local talent. And I think, that was something, that perhaps, we wouldn't have expected, when engaging with, big names, globally. So I think, that has definitely been
That's great. So I guess we can all agree that Pakistani startups are the next big thing. There's no question mark at the end of this title. So I guess we're all on the same track. Thank you for your time.
That word next and become the big thing.
The big thing. Thank you all for your time. It's been great talking with you. Very short, but I'm glad we were able to have a chat.
Thanks for having us, Mr. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Misbah. Lovely meeting you all. Thank you.
Earlier, you heard the first group of global VCs. We now go to a few more and understand why they believe Pakistani startups are the next big thing. How does our progress compare to peer group countries? And what part does the quality of Pakistani talent play in realizing this very vision?
I think it's a phenomenally exciting and bluntly overlooked market. As I said, when you look at other areas which has a lot more influx of capital, I think, bluntly, there's a disproportionate amount of capital going into the opportunity in Pakistan. And, as Jeff Bezos said, your margin is my opportunity. And so I think, very much the case that it makes it a wonderful opportunity and the perfect time to be investing in Pakistan. And I found the engineering pools of talent to be incredibly deep as well. I think this is often something held in emerging markets, which is like, oh, you don't have the depth of engineering talent. Not true at all in my experience of Pakistan. So it's, again, another fantastic joy and another reason that I'm so excited to be investing more and more in Pakistan. I would love to meet any incredible Pakistani founders who are changing their industry, fundamentally reinventing consumer experiences, who really, really want to go big. I want to go big with you. I can help you scale this in very, very developed economies like Europe and the US. I can help you get the world's best sources of capital, and I want to build that bench with you. And so that is absolutely, I would 100% invest in Pakistan again.
We've only made one investment in Pakistan so far, but given the macro factors that I've just mentioned, I think that Pakistan is as good of an international investing opportunity for startups, whether to start or to invest, than any out there in the world. The US will always be exciting for us, but in terms of developing emerging markets, I think Pakistan is the next big thing.
In 2019, I was in Islamabad, and I went on record, and I said this, and again, I was perhaps carried away by the enthusiasm of the crowd, but here's what I said. I said what Silicon Valley did in 40 years, China achieved in 20, Southeast Asia is doing it in 10, and I believe Pakistan will do it in 5. So many people have asked me, Tom, 2 years later, what would you say now? Here's what I'd say. I think Pakistan is ahead of schedule. I think every foreign investor needs to really look at Pakistan, because the question people are going to ask you, 5 years later is, where were you during the takeoff of the Pakistani tech ecosystem? Where were you during the liftoff of this rocket ship? Were you on the sideline or were you on the field? And that's the question you have to ask. And at Gobi, we believe you can't be a spectator. You've got to be a participant.
There are a few reasons that Pakistan, as I think about some emerging ecosystems that we could be investing in, where Pakistan really does stand out. One is this really extremely large population, one of the largest population bases in the world, with an incredibly rich and very highly regarded talent pool, both domestically and abroad, and with a very strong appetite for repatriation. So folks who are really getting their feet wet and really building up their skill sets in some of the best tech companies in the world, who are now launching some really incredible companies in Pakistan, and people who are internally, domestically trained in Pakistan and really cut their teeth building great businesses from the ground up. There's a government that's invested in the digitization of the economy and supporting the innovation therein. Rising digital adoption, mobile first centricity, et cetera. There's just so many reasons that I think Pakistan is going to be the next big place, and it's almost a good. It's all good. Selfishly, you always want to be forefront of these markets opportunities as an investor, but there's just so many rich companies, so many amazing things that are going to come out of it. I think that there's opportunity for everyone to get involved, and I'm definitely actively looking for my next investment in Pakistan. So excited to be a part of the program here today, and looking forward to the many more pitches and companies that I get to meet.
We're really excited about what we're seeing, in particular with our recent investments into Dawai and Retailo. fantastic founders that have been able to carve out niches in Pakistan that expand globally, which is always what we're looking for. Pakistan in and of itself is a great market, but 500 in particular is looking for companies that are really going to be able to expand into markets around the world. So what we've seen in Pakistani founders is the ability to really carve out that niche, build product quickly, be able to make the global connections necessary to raise capital and to grow the business. And we're quite excited to see, especially in terms of fintech in Pakistan and more coming out in infrastructure and even health tech, of course. There's a lot of opportunity, and we've been watching the market very closely.
We've made one investment in Pakistan so far. We hope to announce soon, and we certainly plan to continue to invest in the country. One of our core values as a firm is to operate with depth of conviction. We have meaningful conviction that Pakistan is an extremely attractive region for investment. And, a main premise of our role as early stage investors is to identify and invest behind trends and opportunities that we believe are going to be the next big thing. And we see significant opportunities in segments that are waiting for huge technology-based companies to be built. As a firm, many of our core investments are in the US, but we have also made investments in other regions, including Latin America and Africa and others. I think if you survey fast-growing regions that are capturing a large share of global investments, like parts of Latin America, Africa, Southeast Asia, etc., the fundamentals of the market opportunity in Pakistan rank very highly and compare very favorably to a lot of these regions.
Pakistan is definitively one of the most exciting markets to look at from a technology investing and ecosystem standpoint. I believe that you can create great companies in Pakistan based on all of the infrastructure and the ecosystem that's been created there. And that will serve not just an unaddressed market in Pakistan, but also in economies in the region itself. The biggest advice I would give for companies and VCs who are looking to invest in Pakistan, they should actively look to be part of the Pak Launch community, number one. Number two, they should really look to try and connect and think about the different markets where there is a huge opportunity to invest in. And probably third of all, really understand that this is a long-term investing strategy, as it has been for many, many years in the venture industry. And I think those opportunities exist in Pakistan more than ever before.
It's been great. I think it's been evolving over the last couple of years. I think, one interesting and major trend I'm seeing is that more and more folks who have gotten experience in startups, even abroad or in the US, are coming back in increasing fashion to Pakistan and are leading the charge in a lot of these new companies. And so I think what's bridging and what's happening is that you have folks who've seen success in Silicon Valley or seen what good looks like in Silicon Valley and are taking those learnings back to Pakistan and building some really impressive companies, and also know how to set the bar in terms of how to run a company and the talent that's required to make some of these companies get to scale. And so I think it's a big change that's happening, and I think it's an exciting change to see more and more people going back to Pakistan and launching startups in the Pakistani ecosystem.
It is not just the investment charts that are beating records quarter on quarter. As the Pakistani startup ecosystem passes its maturity milestones, there are a number of local and global success stories led by some amazing founders. And today, we will spotlight a few of them. I'm going to be starting with one of the most well-known enterprises from Pakistani founders, Careem. Careem is a ride-sharing venture. Careem Mafia is a big driving force behind many startups in the wider MENAP region. I am pleased now to invite Mr. Mudassir Sheikha, the CEO and co-founder of Careem. Let's hear his success story in his own words.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Mudassir Sheikha. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Careem. In 2012, we founded Careem in Dubai with an aspiration to build something big and something meaningful. It started as a corporate car service, mainly serving professional services firms, then became a ride-hailing platform that expanded to 100 plus cities in the broader Middle East with 1 million plus captains. And today, we are racing to become the super app for this entire region. In 2019, after years of fierce competition, Uber acquired Careem for $3.1 billion with an agreement to keep Careem fully independent and focused on becoming the super app of this region. It is our strong belief that if we can simplify the lives of people through easy and reliable services on our super app, we'll be able to unleash the true potential of the country and drive an exciting wave of prosperity, not just in Pakistan, but in the entire region. Thanks for listening. Pakistan Zindabad.
And thank you so much, Mr. Mudassir. Many, many congratulations on Careem's success. Next, we have Mr. Imran Ali Khan from the EMPG that owns and operates bespoke classified portals in emerging markets, primarily in the Middle East and North Africa, South Asia, and Southeast Asia regions. Imran Ali Khan, CEO and co-founder of EMPG. Before stepping into the property portal industry, he worked for such prestigious organizations such as Goldman Sachs and Deloitte.
Hi, I'm Imran. I'm the CEO and co-founder of EMPG. EMPG operates classifieds platforms in 16 countries, from Mexico to the MENA region. Pakistan is a large market for us, and Southeast Asia. We started our journey in Pakistan, and I'll talk a bit more about that in due course. In terms of our investors, we've managed to build a pretty good cap table. We have a lot of well-renowned investors who've invested in our business, and our investor base includes Prosus, which was formerly known as Naspers. We have Kingsway Capital, KCK, Acacia Partners. From a geographical footprint, most of our investors, a lot of them actually are from the US, predominantly New York, and Europe, some in sort of outside of Europe as well. So overall, I would say that's it's been a pretty interesting journey for us in terms of building the business, getting a good cap table, building value. We were valued at over $1 billion, which our industry calls a unicorn. We crossed that threshold about 1.5 years ago. So that's where we are today.
Thank you so much, Mr. Imran Ali Khan. Thank you for your words, thank you for your work, and thank you for joining us today. Now, without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to invite Mr. Munib Meyer on the stage, who is the founder at Bikeia, which is the largest network of motorbikes serving on-demand transport, logistics, and payment services in Pakistan. After graduating from the University of Virginia, Munib went to work as an investment banker at Bear Stearns in New York City. He then led a 600-person back office for SNL Financial in Islamabad, a business acquired by Standard & Poor's. And prior to Bikeia, Munib was co-founder and CEO at Daraz.pk, Pakistan's leading e-commerce platform, acquired by Alibaba Group in 2018, creating one of the biggest exits for a Pakistani startup. Let's invite him on stage, Mr. Munib Meyer.
खुददार है शाहकार है हर मंजिल पर हम तैयार हैं जहाँ जाने से मेहनत है प्यारी सब जोश से करने देखेगी दुनिया हर गली भी गूंजेगी जिंदाबाद पाकिस्तान जिंदाबाद जिंदाबाद पाकिस्तान जिंदाबाद अनजान सड़कों पर मंजिल से बाखबर ले जा रहे हैं लोगों को हर रास्ता हर नगर जीने में भरा एक जोश है खुददार है हम हमें होश है तो आओ सारे मिल के लगाए ये सदा
Hi, my name is Munib Meyer. I'm founder at Bikeia and really excited to speak about the opportunity in Pakistan today. If you really want to target the population of Pakistan, like we're talking about 250 million people, right? Ultimately, you've got to target SEC B-, and that is over 100 million people in this country. And if you look at what's happened in the last few years, the internet has started becoming accessible to people on smartphones. So not on desktops alone, but smartphones. The internet is really, it's one of the first times that people are using the internet on a smartphone. And so what we thought was, let's go out and leverage the two assets that the middle class has. One is a motorbike, the second is a smartphone. And Pakistan has a lot of motorbikes. What most people don't know is that not only is Pakistan the 5th largest population in the world, but it's also the 4th or the 5th largest motorbike population in the world. And so we started thinking about how do you leverage assets that people have, particularly the middle class. And what was strange was, 4 years ago, let alone even today, there was no platform in Pakistan's native language. It sounds really strange, but almost most apps in Pakistan today are in English, right? Catering to, again, the top of the pyramid, the super rich, the fluent in English. And so what we found an opportunity for was build an on-demand, hyper-local, that means within a city, product in Urdu. And so even today, I think we're probably the largest platform in Urdu. And what you see in the background is our app in Urdu on the customer side, but also on the driver side, right? Really build digital literacy. And I think we got very fortunate. We were supported by local VCs, Sarmaya Kar, Ithaca Capital. And then in the last couple of years, we've also had very, very renowned global investors like Prosus. And for those of you who don't know Prosus, it used to be called Naspers Ventures, is the largest shareholder in Tencent Group, right? They led our Series B round, and MEVP, which is largest VC out of the Middle East, and Terra's out of Southeast Asia. So we've had support to really build what is perhaps today Pakistan's largest matchmaking platform. So really excited for Pakistan and really excited for the opportunity to make Pakistan shine. And we believe Baikia is really going to make transformational livelihood changes in the demographic in Pakistan. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Muneeb. Such a wonderful success. We are happy to have with us founder and CEO of Keep Trucking. Shoaib has extensive experience in entrepreneurship and venture capital. Now, prior to founding Keep Trucking, Shoaib worked at Khosla Venture, where he led investments in consumer and enterprise technology companies, including Instacart, Everlane, Yammer, and HackerRank. And before that, Shoaib led business development for Google's mobile advertising business in Asia as well as Latin America.
I believe the heart and soul of this nation has a lot to do with the trucking industry. Everything is brought to you by trucker. My truck is my livelihood. My truck is my second home.
Keep Trucking plays a tremendous role between fleet manager and the drivers. It makes it easy for our drivers to communicate with us, and we can identify where our drivers are. It absolutely has enabled us to be a better team.
After we've worked 70 hours in a week, we have to reset our hours. And that's where the software helps us determine when we take our time off.
Electronic logs, dash cams. Technology has come a long ways.
In the past, even if they weren't the cause of an accident, drivers have been held responsible, and Keep Trucking helps us identify if the driver was at fault or not. The driver's accountable, and it keeps us accountable.
The culture is changing. There's such a need for drivers now. Let's get them all the help they can get and make sure everybody gets home safe and sound.
When I started KT 8 years ago, I would have never guessed that Pakistan would play such a major role in our company's journey. Let me start by explaining what Keep Truckin' does. We build hardware and software that improves the safety and productivity of businesses that power the physical economy. Think trucking companies, construction companies, oil and gas firms. They use our tech to ensure that their vehicles, their equipment, and their other physical assets are being operated safely and efficiently. From AI-powered dash cams and driver assistance systems to fuel management and regulatory compliance, we solve a broad range of problems for our customers. And today, we serve now more than 100,000 customers. We generate hundreds of millions of dollars of annual revenue. We have north of 2,500 employees with offices in the US, Canada, Taiwan, India, and of course, Pakistan. Early seeds have now grown to more than 1,500 team members in Pakistan, working on some of the hardest machine learning problems, distributed systems problems, computer vision problems. We're also selling to and serving customers from all over the world in Pakistan. To put it simply, KT would not exist in its current form without our team in Pakistan. The talent in this market is exceptional, but until recently has not had a chance to realize its full potential without leaving the country. But that is changing rapidly. Our success has paved the way for many other American and European startups to build engineering, sales, and operations teams in Pakistan. Companies like Sendoso, Podium, Speckit, and many others are building world-class teams in the country. Companies like KT is going to be the creation of thousands of new local entrepreneurs. We are training a whole generation of young people on what it takes to build great technology products, how to distribute those products efficiently and at scale, and the operating principles and cultural values that enable high-performing organizations. KT and our peer set will spawn many new companies, both inside and outside the country. This is something that we as a company encourage and that I am personally investing in. In just the past year, 3 of our former team members from Pakistan have started companies and have raised meaningful funding rounds from leading Silicon Valley investors. This is the first of many, many more to come. We are still in the very early days of the development of the Pakistani startup economy. And as with most emerging markets, there is going to be a broad distribution of outcomes and many failures. But the returns and impact for early investors will be outsized. Eventually, the world will discover what we have known for years. Pakistan is one of the largest untapped talent markets globally and is ripe for investment. The 20s are going to be transformational for Pakistan. And KT is proud to play a critical role in training and investing in the future leaders of Pakistan's economic growth. Thank you.
Wow, that is an absolutely great success story with a huge impact. And now we have Mr. Uzair Garrett from one of the biggest homegrown tech houses. Garrett Tech is a center of excellence and it's an integral part of Disrupt.com, a designated R&D space and talent pool that innovates relentlessly. Cloudways, PureVPN, Savior, Supercrypt are some of their famous brands. I now invite co-founder and CEO Uzair Garrett to come on stage and share his success story.
Did you know that there is a tech group homegrown in Pakistan that is fully bootstrapped and currently churning a revenue run rate of $80 million? If not, then it's time you meet Disrupt.com. The Disrupt.com story begins in 2009 with 3 university students who decided to give up safe careers, beat the status quo, and make waves of disruption. Ambitious and hungry, they experimented with product after product, solving global needs from a Pakistani home base. While covering expenses with client projects, the group bootstrapped the first cybersecurity product in 2009 from Pakistan. A second breakthrough came in managed cloud services, again a first for Pakistan. Athleisure, lifestyle, cryptocurrency, each followed in turn. Today, Disrupt.com is a fully diversified tech company with 8 SaaS products and platforms. This is a remarkable growth story, largely untold. We have had not one, but several runaway successes in these 12 years. Our brands have started to mature, and our revenue has been remarkable through changing market conditions. Today, we serve millions of subscribers and thousands of businesses in 6 industries and over 150 countries around the globe. By serving the tech needs of our customers wherever they are.
Hello, my name is Uzair Garrett, and I'm the founding partner at Disrupt.com. Having spent more than a decade building tech products from Pakistan, having served millions of consumers and thousands of businesses across more than 150 countries, having spent time across some of the most pressing and emerging spaces of today's human lives, be it consumer privacy, cloud computing, cryptocurrencies, and generating more than $500 million worth of shareholder value. Here I am today to share our experience, our thesis, our aspirations, our belief system. I thought I should rather take the conversation forward and point towards an angle that we believe is basically the pinnacle of success of any budding ecosystem. It's a pinnacle that once an ecosystem reaches that level, the return to all those who participated in the success of that ecosystem is just increases multitudes. That angle, that pinnacle happens when that ecosystem starts to produce what we call global companies, who basically produce talent, who basically produce value, who basically create systems, who basically create products, which then they export globally. If we start to fantasize, if we start to preach what we call ultra long-termism, only then we believe that our ecosystem will be set into motion to achieve to that height of pinnacle, height of success, what we call, in maybe a few decades of time. And the case in point being the ecosystems that are all around us. There are fledgling ecosystems all part of the world that you can see, but you can count on fingers how many of those ecosystems have actually created world-class companies, have actually created companies that have gone on to conquer the worlds. How many ecosystems have actually utilized their local talent to create global impact? You can count them on fingers. If you start looking at, go back in history, I can name Tata for what it did with India. Then you look at Samsung's, what Samsung had done to the Korean ecosystem. And a recent example is of Atlassian in Australia. This philosophy at Disrupt.com is best exemplified by the work of Simon Sinek in his recent book, The Infinite Game. And our research, our reading of the market, our reading of the global macro indicators, our reading of the power structure in the region, how the geopolitical environment has evolved, makes us believe that the time is now. It's our choice whether we want to make the first move in setting up the right pace so that our ecosystem not only thrives, and has been thriving over the last few quarters, last few years, but actually it's set into such an escape velocity that it can escape that pull that many ecosystems have failed to achieve, despite their homegrown successes. To end my note, I would like to invite all the stakeholders in the ecosystem to share our belief, to look at it from the lens that we have looked over the last decade or so. And I'm not hesitated to claim that what we see can emerge from this ecosystem is not a unicorn, it's not a decacorn, if we are able to tame into that generational business mindset. Again, I'm repeating, if we are able to tap into the generational business mindsets, I see a hectacorn on the horizon. Thank you.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have Dr. Naveed Sharwani. With over 30 years of experience in entrepreneurship and technology, Dr. Naveed Sharwani is a well-known name in both Pakistan as well as the Silicon Valley. He founded his first company when he was only 18 and has founded and co-founded many, many ventures since. He currently serves as chairman of Silicon Federation, which enables semiconductor companies to develop global growth strategies. He also serves as chairman of several companies, including Star 5 and Leap 5, and author of several books and over 100 articles on various aspects of VLSI, physical design, automation, and ASICs. Dr. Sharwani served as a professor at Western Michigan University.
I think I have seen in the last 20 years an amazing change where the young people of Pakistan have stopped looking elsewhere and they have decided that they are going to do it themselves. This is a kind of empowerment that I have not really seen in any other country, where suddenly a generation decides, you know what, we don't want to depend on anybody else. It is us and nothing else. And I believe this is what is powering the Pakistan tech ecosystem. It is the yearning of the young people to do something. I have met so many people who have no experience. They have really not done anything, but they have this amazing energy that I want to do something. And this, I believe, I have not seen in any other country. And I believe this is what is enabling people to take this amazing risks, which is a very important part of an entrepreneurship ecosystem where people are willing to take risks. I think Pakistan is now ripe for investment because a large population, middle class, needs all the products and services that any other developing country needs. So that's a large market. So there is a lot of scope of hundreds of companies to do that. And that span from fintech, health tech, ag tech, to all other e-tailing opportunities. It's a lot of opportunities. So one thing I would say is that Pakistan is a country with its own culture on traditions and things like that. So I think it would be good for somebody who's investing in Pakistan to have a local partner, a person who's understands the local culture, understands the tradition, understands the kind of things that will work in Pakistan versus they will not work in Pakistan. This is exactly what we did in India. This is exactly what we did in Vietnam. This is exactly what we did in Malaysia. So this is no different.
Thank you so much for your time, sir. Once again, thank you so very much. You took our time for us. You spoke to us today, and there was so much to learn. There are so many success stories to tell everybody from across Pakistan that if we start now, we'll probably run out of time. However, we cannot miss Mr. Monis Rahman. He is an internet entrepreneur and an investor. He's got various ventures. He's the co-founder of Rosie.pk, Finja, and Dukaan. His ventures span across job classifieds, fintech, and as well as e-commerce. Mr. Rahman has been listed amongst the top 20 entrepreneurs of the 21st century several times. So let's watch what his accomplishments are on our screen.
Monis is one of Pakistan's internet pioneers, having moved back in 2003 to launch Naseeb.com, an online Muslim social network. He went on to found Rosie.pk, which is today Pakistan's largest employment platform and became the first local startup to raise venture funding in 2008. Rosie launched Rozgar.pk during COVID to help get blue-collar workers back into jobs. The Rozgar platform, in its early pilot phase, has helped thousands of barely educated workers find jobs on their recently acquired smartphones. In 2015, he co-founded Finja, where he serves as chairman. Finja created Pakistan's first smartphone mobile wallet called SimSim and quickly pivoted into digital lending. Finja became the country's first venture-funded fintech in 2015 and recently closed $10 million Series A1 with participation from Habib Bank. Finja has digitally dispersed over 50,000 loans to micro, small and medium enterprises with a less than 1% default rate. He most recently launched Dukaan.pk during COVID, which lets anyone with a smartphone sell online within seconds, market their goods and get digital credit based on their sales data within the app's mobile wallet. Ladies and gentlemen, Monis Rahman.
Mr. Monis Rahman. Hello there.
Hello, thank you.
Thank you for being here today, sir, and
It's
thank
a
you for
pleasure.
all that you do.
It's a pleasure.
I cannot wait to hear about it. The stage is all yours.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Very exciting time to be here. It's a kind of a pivotal moment in the history of the country. So going from a time when there were 1.8 million internet users to now where there are about 110 million internet users, 50 million of whom have joined in the last 5 years, has been transformational. At the same time, we've seen a lot of interest from investors, which has really transformed the landscape. I remember when we raised funding for Rosie in 2008, it was the first institutional investment round from international VCs. It was very tough to raise that funding round. We had to sell the Pakistan story much more than the story of what we were doing with our jobs business. And since then, a few years after that, there were no more funding rounds. 2-3 years later, and they started accelerating. Last year during COVID, we saw 28 deals, maybe 50, 60 deals so far this year. $250 million has been invested. This whole ecosystem has gotten hot. Valuations are increasing. Smart people are moving in. And we saw growth in Rosie. We've helped over 1 million people into jobs, 85,000 employers, a lot of whom you've heard of, and most whom you have not heard of, use our platform to hire. It's been exhilarating. Finja was co-founded with my fantastic co-founders. And we launched on the back of a microfinance bank, used their license as a super agent, and found a way to launch Pakistan's first smartphone-based mobile wallet when the other large wallet players were working on USSD. So we worked out a way to do KYC on the phone, and we're very excited that we've launched a smartphone-based wallet. But very quickly thereafter, we figured out that with our very small investment round of around $1 million and having a smartphone wallet, we were really at a disadvantage compared to the telcos who had a lot more money, a lot more users. So we did a pivot, a very quick pivot into the lending space. And we became excited by the MSMEs. And we began to lend to the small Kriana stores and the supply chains. And now Finja has processed over 50,000 loans that are completely unsecured based on scoring information, based on data. And if you look at the total SME loans given in the country, the data from State Bank of Pakistan, already at our early stages, about 8% of all SME loans by number have been given by Finja, a fintech startup that's very new into this ecosystem. And our default rate is less than 1%, about 0.6%, versus about 18.4% for the other loans that are being handed by the banks, etc. And now with Dukaan, it's been about 4 or 5 months. We've clocked about 120,000 shops that have created stores online on this new platform. And the idea of Dukaan is basically to allow anybody with a smartphone sell anything they want instantly in under a minute. You upload your pictures, we take care of all of the payment gateways, we take care of the delivery through partnerships with the ecosystem. And as people sell through this platform, it solves another problem. As Finja is scaling MSME loans and helping these small organizations grow larger by giving them credit, one of the bottlenecks is how do you get the data? How do you help get anybody who sells online to be eligible for credit? Because the banks aren't stepping in at the rate that they need to. So this has been an interesting journey. Along the way with Rosie, we found out that we could finally now onboard blue-collar workers who were previously completely excluded and who weren't important to anybody, who are barely educated, but they're smart enough to own a smartphone, they're smart enough to use WhatsApp, and they're smart enough to use Facebook. But we haven't built any applications for them. And through this Rozgar platform that we launched, we have managed to get thousands of people into jobs who are barely able to read and write, but can operate their smartphones. My whole journey until now and where I'm going and what excites me about this ecosystem, being a dinosaur, being probably one of the first startups in the country to ever raise VC investment, and being at the point we are, what excites me and what is my life goal now, my journey for everything I'm doing, is connecting technology with financial services and e-commerce. And I think this combination is a game changer for the country. Of these 110 million internet users, 50, 60 million of them are at the bottom of the pyramid. These are people we previously didn't think of as actually a segment to sell to or to make applications to. Well, they're now online. We can get them into jobs. We can help them sell. We can give them credit to grow. And this is how we transform this country. It's a massive market at the bottom of the pyramid. And we're seeing very good signs, early signs. A lot of the startups you've heard earlier today, a lot of the investors who've entered the country, they have seen this play out. We are seeing it firsthand with our own eyes that we are here at probably the most exciting time in the digital history of the country. This is it. The time is now. And this is a time to transform the country and the people and the population and create opportunity for people we were never able to create opportunity for before. Thank you very much.
And how inspirational was this segment? Truly amazing success stories across sectors and markets. You could also sense the strong connection to Pakistan. We are lucky to have some of the biggest VCs with us today who are focused on Pakistani startups. In the next few minutes, they will discuss their first-hand views and experiences associated with the elevated investment activity that we are observing in the country, as you saw from Kulsoom and Atif's presentations.
Hi everyone, welcome to the local Pakistan-focused VC panel. It's a pleasure to be here today in Pak Launch's first conference. It's been a tremendous year. In 2021 alone, we've had more than $230 million come into the ecosystem. I think in the last 18 months, we've seen our active smartphone user touch 100 million. So I'll start off asking the panelists here, what do you think has led to the recent surge of capital in the ecosystem? And how do you foresee this over the coming 3 years? I'll start with Rabil.
Thank you for having me, Faisal. I think there are three main themes or factors that are contributing to this. One is there's just a risk-on environment globally, searching for yield. And we all know about the attractive demographic opportunity in Pakistan. And that search for yield or like returns has led a lot of investors to focus on Pakistan recently. Second thing is I think there's more actionable deal flow now. Our founders are a lot more articulate in sharing that story. They have the base traction at the ground level to be able to make a case for why additional funding would allow them to capture market share. And I think that's leading to like a lot more inflow of capital into the market. And I think the third is an overall more enabling environment, partly contributed by like, regulators, authorities in the country. And just overall, people not kind of weighing Pakistan down from a risk perspective and just kind of putting it in a different bucket. I think all of those factors together have led to this recent surge.
With that, Ali, you just one of your portfolio companies just raised probably the biggest round in Pakistan's history, Airlift, with I think it was $85 million. Are you just as bullish over the next 3 years? And tell us about what you've seen over the last 12 months and where you see things going in terms of the capital inflow.
We're very, very bullish, Vessel. So we've been actively investing. We have now in total made over 15 investments within the last 12 months. A couple of them, yet to be announced. And we're going to continue to, invest. I think the key reasons, as mentioned by other panelists to us are, a combination of factors coming together. Number one being, first and foremost, being talent. Then the right infrastructure. As you compare this to other ecosystems, one important factor that we saw is post the launch of, 3G, 4G infrastructure, a venture starts to really take off 5 to 7 years from that point. We saw this in Egypt, we saw this in India, we saw this, in early 2000s of China. And that's really what's happening. Pakistan had this launch in 2013, 2014, and now you have over 100 million, connected users, which is, essential for building consumer-focused internet companies. And lastly, obviously, the right policy infrastructure. All these three factors coming together, coupled with both domestic, leaders, that are present on this panel, on the receiving end in Pakistan, enabling other foreign investors to also look at the market. So we're very bullish for what the years to come.
Absolutely. So, one of the things that I think we've all seen in the ecosystem is that effectively waves of interest comes in terms of e-commerce, then mobility, then we saw the grocery plays, B2B. So in your respective opinions, over the coming 24 months, what sectors do you think are going to be the most critical? I mean, we've seen the recent surge in fintech. So I'd like to get each one of your opinions on this. I'll start with the Khurram. Let me know your thoughts on this.
All right. I thought it was going to be third all the time. It was a bit difficult to come after Rabil and Misbah. Well, so look, one of the biggest strengths of the Pakistani market is its consumers, right? It's a massive market, 210, 215 million people, 100 million of them, more than half of them now, connected to the broadband internet and, sort of facilitating, paving the path for distribution of technical products and services. So you obviously, the low-hanging fruit is, a lot of the consumer plays. But then, when you sort of build your thesis, at least the way we do it, we also look at some of the global trends, right? So you don't want to be in markets where there's a lot of consolidation, concentration with very large global players, right? It wouldn't make sense, for example, to build a search engine in Pakistan. Google has already taken care of that for the rest of the world. So for digital products, we look at opportunities that are still fragmented. There's no single big players internationally, because that offers you an opportunity to build something in Pakistan, not just for the Pakistani market, but also for the global market. The second thing we look for is sort of coming together of the physical and the digital both, where businesses require some physical presence and on the ground boots to be successful, right? Because otherwise, a lot of these large companies in the US and the Europe and China, they could just come over and just acquire users like crazy and beat any competition in Pakistan. So we look for opportunities where there's, one of our investments is Healthwire, for example. It has gone out, onboarded thousands of doctors and clinics and hospitals and labs and pharmacies, and sort of created this network that now they're in the process of monetizing by focusing on the patient side. That's a classic example. Something Vendi is another investment where we're putting vending machines, the physical machines, all over Pakistan.
Yeah.
So those are the two areas that we filter our opportunities with.
Misbah?
Yeah, I think you mentioned fintech already, Faisal. I think fintech will continue to grow.
Yeah.
I think it's slightly fragmented right now. Obviously, fintech itself is a very broad sort of space. Our research team just came out with a fintech briefing where they talked about the different verticals. So there's obviously everything from mobile payments and going all the way to insurtech, etc. So a lot of opportunities in fintech. I think that's going to continue, and that's going to also be pushed on by the kind of regulatory changes that have been coming recently and that we foresee to continue to come. I think that a couple of the areas which we're excited about, we're looking at EdTech also. One of our companies at CASA is working is in the edtech space. I think edtech is a big opportunity, and people have become a lot more comfortable after COVID, looking at education online. So I think there's going to be increased adoption and there's a very wide open space right now in terms of the opportunities that startups can actually bring in edtech. I think beyond that, Khurram and Ali mentioned some of the others in terms of logistics, etc. I think one area where we would love to find more opportunities and that I'm bullish about is B2B SaaS, because that has been shown in other markets as markets mature, that those plays that come in are actually great from an investment perspective and also become a backbone of solutions that can be built for B2C businesses beyond that.
What I would say is we're all essentially investing in the future. I mean, our job as venture capitalists is to kind of try to predict the future, and hopefully we're somewhat right and get returns for our investors. So in each of your respective views, how do you see the Pakistan story playing out over the next 10 years? So let's leapfrog into 2030 and visualize where the country sits. So I'll give you my synopsis in a very a quick summary. The way I look at it is very simple, is that Pakistan is closest comparable is India. So India's stock market is effectively roughly around $2.4 trillion in terms of the aggregate market cap today. In about 10 years, it's projected to be, through Morgan Stanley, your previous entity, it's projected to be, I think, somewhere around close to $7 trillion, right? And of that, if I look at it from a S&P 500 perspective, where 30% is aggregate as tech, so let's extrapolate and say let's $1 trillion of valuations of the overall market cap in India are tech, right? And Pakistan will be some subset of that. Whether it's, I don't think it's 10%, maybe it's 5% or 3%, but that actually results in billions and billions of dollars of aggregate market caps. And I think 2021 shows us the early signs of it. Excellent. Ali, your take on this?
No, I definitely think Pakistan is on the right track to, in the next 10 years, to be over $1 billion in venture investments, creating multiple unicorns in fintech, e-commerce, multiple other sectors that are emerging. So we're definitely on that track. One very interesting thing that we're noting is, on the company level, the companies are transforming and already doing, what some of the late stage companies and other ecosystems are doing much earlier on, given the information flow from other markets, and then they've already seen how different models evolve. So in terms of, how companies develop and grow, we're seeing a much faster trajectory as the market is developing compared to what we saw in early days of China and then Southeast Asia and some of the other markets. So we're definitely very bullish and expect this to be over $1 billion in venture.
And Rabil, so SPACs are coming into play, and we've seen effectively valuations, and that's why I'm not being very conservative on that number. In the interest of time, I would say, what would you think is that number, and what is your justification? The aggregate market cap of tech ventures.
I think a lot of the capital that's coming in right now is going to generate a return. We are also going to be burnt in some places, because obviously a lot of this is really trying to determine where the returns stack up, relative to the opportunity as well. And I think if I was a betting man, which I must maintain I'm not, despite my career, I would say we're north of $10 billion aggregate market cap just for startups, or however you define the tech ecosystem to be. And relative to where overall market is, this is going to be the highest growth segment, and also the highest value generate and value creation segment. Obviously, there's a lot that goes into it, but each one of our checks that's going in is expecting a 10x plus return on that capital. So if we're sitting at $250 million this year invested, in the coming years, if you have $1 billion or $2 billion hit in a single year, a lot of that capital is going to generate a return. So I think I would put my money on this being north of a 10 billion mark in a few years' time.
So let's start off, and I'll come to Misbah first. what do you see Pakistan's tech ecosystem as in 2030 and the country in terms of digitization?
Yeah. I mean, I think the kind of pace we've seen in the last 6 months is already showing that kind of extrapolation and that picking up of speed in terms of activity, rounds, quality of founders, etc., and then opportunities being tapped into. So I definitely see that's going to continue. Of course, business cycles come and go, so they will see some dips, but I think the trajectory is going to continue to stay positive. You mentioned India. I actually think if we look at Egypt and Indonesia, and look at the trajectories that those markets have taken, I'm actually quite confident that Pakistan will be able to surpass the kind of growth that we've seen in those markets. And that growth is by no means, small numbers. So in terms of markets, I think if you look at Indonesia and Egypt and see the kinds of companies that have thrived there, I think we actually are very well positioned right now to actually even overtake that. And I feel like that's going to happen in the next 5 years. We don't even have to wait a decade for that. So I definitely see a proliferation in the kinds of solutions that are being offered, people getting much more tech savvy. We have such a young population, majority is Gen Z at the moment. So all of that is going to continue to accelerate. And I think definitely it might take some time for us to catch up to India, but I definitely think that we're going to overtake regional markets fairly quickly and easily probably by 2030.
Well, thank you everyone for being on this panel. It was really a pleasure. And we look forward to doing this again in the future. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
We are privileged to have our Federal Minister for Science and Technology, Senator Shibli Faraz, and Mr. Amir Hashmi, who's the chairman of Special Technology Zones Authority, joining in for this Park Launch flagship event. Mr. Faraz is a former investment banker, an aviator, a civil servant, and he has held several legislative positions in the past few years, including leader of the Upper House and Federal Information Minister. Mr. Hashmi, as a global strategist, IT executive, and entrepreneur, possesses diverse global experience in organizational leaderships with companies like IBM and MCI System House. He was the founding CEO of SI3.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Dear delegates and participants, it's a privilege to be addressing today a gathering of such amazing people from across the world who have come together for one common cause, interest, Pakistan and its progress. Our esteemed diaspora abroad has always endeavored to be the ambassadors for their homeland, but I would especially like to welcome this cohort of international investors who believe in Pakistan and its talent's potential. We recognize that startups do not exist in a vacuum of their own, but are integral parts of a broader business environment, and therefore efforts need to cover all those aspects if we are to realize real and sustainable acceleration in this development journey. So you would appreciate that our national startup policy is built on 7 complementary pillars. Number 1, infrastructure augmentation. We are establishing incubation centers across the length and breadth of the country, developing linkages with academia and establishing infrastructure funds, for example. Number 2, venture capital funding. I am so impressed to hear from such reputed venture capitalists, both local and international today. It is heartening to see how they see this market. The state is establishing domestic and foreign VC fundings to add to the flow of capital that would be needed for so many early stage enterprises. Number 3, ease of doing business. We recognize that despite amazing demographics, every country has to compete for foreign investment. And so, drastic improvement in this area is high on the agenda. Tax exemptions, simpler regulations, exit options, and a one-stop shop to simplify procedures, etc., is something to look forward to under this area. Number 4, beyond that, there is tremendous focus on nurturing of talent, providing our entrepreneurs global exposure and active promotion of innovation culture in the country. This initiative by Park Launch is testament that there is no shortage of interest, but to truly succeed, we must have strong partnership with all players in the ecosystem. Everyone has to play a part, and as the government, we want to make it absolutely clear that our visions are common. The world we live in is driven by technology that is progressing at the speed of light. No aspect of business governance or everyday life would be left out of this technology penetration. Technological development will drive all economic activity agnostic to sector, geography, or markets. And the fuel for that comes from innovation. We have seen and heard today that our talented young entrepreneurs have both the will and the skill to make their mark on the world stage. And investors all over the world recognize this, which is why they are more than willing to bet on these ventures. On behalf of the Government of Pakistan, and particularly the Ministry of Science and Technology, I want to add our resolve to this cause as well. In all aspects of policy, infrastructure, regulatory environment, talent development, we would do our utmost to add the required impetus. Your views and feedback would be crucial to shape these aspects, so I look forward to having many dialogues and many such forums where we can learn and celebrate alike. We invite you to join us in Islamabad at the International Startup Grind Pakistan Conference in December. Thank you for believing in Pakistan startups. Together, let's make it the next big thing. Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum. Greetings to all the entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, the tech companies out there that we're addressing. I'm Amir Hashmi, and I'm the chairman of what we call the Special Technology Zone Authority under the federal government, which is an exciting initiative for the technology ecosystem of Pakistan. And what it is a framework for large global companies, Pakistani startups, small mid-sized companies from global partners around the world, research centers, universities, technical schools, venture capitalist firms, all in an enabling environment that's backed by the federal government for special tax incentives, for special state bank regulations for foreign exchange, for special relief on income and duty free for companies that are going to be there called zone enterprises. So it's actually a tech entrepreneur system that's been established by the government. Now, the reason the government's established all of this is, of course, for the tech and innovation entrepreneurship ecosystem to grow. And why we want to see it, of course, our region, which has been, if you look at what's happened recently in the region, a troubled region in which the youth is so heavy in terms of technology, but job opportunities have to be created, R&D has to be done, innovation has to be done. So Pakistan is going to head down that path to be a digital Pakistan where we become the hub for this opportunity for the youth and the economic growth of the country. So it's really exciting that I get to speak to you today and address this and welcome you to the STZA. Pak Launch is a critical initiative that reinforces just how essential startups are. If we're looking at the last 5 years, you may observe that Pakistani startup scene has been increasing, and this is without the incentives that the federal government were giving. And now that the federal government is focused on making these zones and giving licenses to zone enterprises and zone developers that will enable the startup community and the SME community to seek that funding. And for the VCs, it's just fantastic. You can park your funds in Pakistan, take out your full profits. The zone enterprises have a license for 10 years and zone developers have a license for 10 years. So it's really exciting that I get to speak to you today and address this and welcome you to the STZA.
We would change the track a little bit here and take a short stroll down the corridor of how key leaders representing Pakistan's marketplace are looking at these developments. State Bank of Pakistan and Pakistan Stock Exchange are just a couple of key institutions that play an important part in our ecosystem. Pak Launch is fortunate to get quick bites for our conference from there. Dr. Raza Bakr, who is a renowned economist and currently holds the charge as the 20th governor of the State Bank of Pakistan. His impeccable education credentials are from Harvard and University of California at Berkeley. And before taking up all this important position to guide the country's monetary policy, Dr. Bakr held numerous positions in the IMF. We will hear from him on some initiatives underway at the State Bank of Pakistan to facilitate the growth of the Pakistani startup ecosystem.
It's a pleasure to be with you at today's event of Pak Launch. As the Governor of the Central Bank of Pakistan, it is my keen desire to help facilitate a financial system in Pakistan that makes it attractive for you to invest in Pakistan, as well as to divest when your investments mature. To this effect, the Central Bank of Pakistan has made concrete progress in 3 key areas. First, in June of 2019, together with the IMF, we started a comprehensive economic reform program that stabilized the economy and restored economic prosperity when previously there were serious questions about the economic future. Our second key area where we have been working to make it easy for you to invest is to change our foreign exchange regulations to make it easy for you to invest as well as to divest. And I want to give you 3 concrete examples of some changes that have been undertaken recently. First was a demand from many startups to allow a structure where holding companies abroad can be used to raise capital for investment in Pakistan. We were told that this would raise the comfort level of investors that want a legal regime that they feel comfortable with. That has been allowed and has been used by many of the startups that have recently raised funding. Second, we were requested to allow convertible debt for raising financing from abroad. We have allowed that as well. And third, we were requested by the startup community to make it easy for repatriation of disinvestment proceeds. And I'm happy to share that we have delegated that completely to the commercial banks instead of the prior practice where such approvals had to be sent to the central bank. So to close my remarks, I want to share with you 3 key areas where we have been working, which we believe will make it more attractive for you to consider Pakistan as your investment destination. Restoration of macroeconomic stability, far-reaching reforms to the foreign exchange regulatory framework to make it easy for you to bring money in as well as to take money out. And finally, an ambitious agenda on digitization of our financial system, which will make it easy for everybody to transact and reduce the cost of doing business. And it is heartening to see that some of the efforts of the Central Bank of Pakistan, the government, and other players in this scene are paying off. Thank you.
Also among our distinguished speakers today is Mr. Farrukh H. Khan, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Pakistan Stock Exchange. Mr. Khan has had a successful career as a business and financial professional, both in Pakistan as well as the United Kingdom. He's an experienced entrepreneur and a leading business and financial advisor who has advised on many landmark transactions, including Etisalat's $2.6 billion acquisition of PTCL. In the past, he's also served as the president of the Overseas Investors Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
On behalf of Pakistan Stock Exchange, I'm very happy to be part of this virtual conference. This is an excellent initiative by Pak Launch to showcase the exciting startup and early stage opportunities in Pakistan. One of the top emerging market investors once said to me that Pakistan is the best information arbitrage opportunity in the world. It's not that there are no challenges on the ground, but the difference between perception and reality is so great that anyone who makes the effort to understand the Pakistan opportunity generally does well. Needless to say that he profited greatly from his investments in Pakistan. Similarly, the few hundred multinationals operating in Pakistan have some of the highest ROEs in the region. Not surprising, since Pakistan is the 5th largest country in the world and has a compelling domestic demand-driven investment story. Like any emerging market, it is not always easy to understand the opportunities, the challenges, and risks. And perhaps this is even more so for Pakistan, which is why the Park Launch Network and this conference is so important. The Park Launch Network comprises of high caliber individuals who understand Pakistan well. You will hear from many of them in this conference, and I'm sure that by the end you will have a better understanding of the Pakistan startup opportunity. Pakistan Stock Exchange is committed to supporting startups and smaller growth companies. We have recently launched the Growth Enterprise Market, or the GEM board. Compared to the main board, the regulations are very simple and cost of listing is extremely low. Greenfield and growth companies can both list and raise capital. Listing on the GEM board will also provide an exit option to early stage investors, and you know how difficult exits are. In this way, we hope that the GEM board will help to develop the full spectrum of early stage financing in Pakistan. PSX opened for foreign investors in 1991. So the FX rules impacting investors, corporate governance, and accounting standards for listed companies are extremely well developed and follow international standards. Hence, by listing, the risk associated with early stage growth companies will be mitigated. PSX is working with a number of institutions to support early stage companies, including women-led enterprises, and with the Pakistan Software Export Board to facilitate IT companies to get listed on the GEM board.
And what an exciting time. You heard from some of the biggest names connected to the Pakistani startup ecosystem, as well as global investors who see the untapped potential of Pakistan. You met some trail-blazing founders who are leading the charge to put Pakistan on the map with their ventures across all sectors and successfully making a difference. Hopefully, this event has got you excited about Pakistan's prospects the same way that we feel at Park Launch. All of us together can play a part to drive this mission and truly realize our belief that Pakistani startups are the next big thing. For closing remarks now, I will hand over to Mr. Ali Jahangir Siddiqui, who is an ambassador at large for foreign investment and the former ambassador of Pakistan to the United States of America. Mr. Ali is a diplomat, an entrepreneur, and has also served as a special assistant to the Prime Minister of Pakistan. Mr. Siddiqui founded JS Bank back in 2006 by acquiring American Express Bank's Pakistan operations. Over the space of a decade, the bank has grown to $4 billion in assets, 5,000 employees, and branches in over 160 cities across Pakistan. Previously, he was chairman and chief investment officer at JS Private Equity Management. Without further delay, let's hand it over to Mr. Jahangir. Thank you so much for staying with me. I will see you guys soon.
Assalamu alaikum. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm grateful to Park Launch for organizing this wonderful conference. I'd like to tell you the story of Pakistani tech. But this story does not speak of the many Pakistani tech companies that have successfully raised venture capital in the last 2 years, because that's a story you're familiar with. Rather than tell you the story of bright young entrepreneurs, growing freelance programmers, and technology allowing Pakistan to leapfrog and bypass old systems, all of which are true, I want to tell you a different story. And I'd like to tell this story by examining 3 themes of Pakistani tech that you might not be familiar with. First, I'd like to speak about whether Pakistani tech is a new story. We've all heard about this new wave of Pakistani tech investments since 2020, which is completely correct. But successful tech companies in Pakistan have been around for a while, and we are experiencing the second wave. And I think at this time, it's worth examining the first. For the last 20 years, Pakistani tech companies have been growing and thriving. If we look at publicly listed Pakistani tech companies, over the last 2 decades, they include many success stories. Each week, I speak with a new global investor who is either putting money to work in Pakistan already and negotiating with a Pakistani company, or is looking to do so. And each week, we learn of new Pakistani tech companies that are doing not only innovation by taking existing business models that have worked elsewhere, replicating them and improving them, but also critical work in areas such as blockchain, artificial intelligence, and data science. We are at escape velocity, and we've just scratched the surface. Whether you're an investor, an entrepreneur, a professional, or a global enterprise, we invite you to join us on this journey to discover Pakistani tech. You will learn that you were early to this story and you made the next big discovery in Pakistan.